it would behoove you to adapt to those changes the first time they come around. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome or welcome back to EGO Initiative, where we focus on prioritizing our wellness daily. In today's Wellness Wednesday chat, I'm going to be talking all about change. Why it is essentially good for us to shift our mindsets when it comes to change, and not to fight against it, but really to embrace change and figure out ways to grow through whatever changes are happening in our lives. And of course, I'm going to be sharing some tips on just how to do that. Before I continue, I might as well address me holding my little lapel mic. The clip is broken, and so I figured the show must go on and I can just hold on to the mic. I'm a hand talker as well, so hopefully that'll reduce some of the hand talking that I do. But either way, the information is hopefully still valuable for you and you have clear, crisp sound. Change is inevitable. Changes are going to happen anyways. And so you might as well shift your mindset around how you are thinking about changes, whether it be personal changes in your life or global changes that have happened in the past 23 months. So you definitely want to think about ways in which you are showing up and thinking about change. So change is inevitable. Change is also cyclical. Just like life has different seasons, changes will come around and around. The same type of changes will happen every so often. So it would behoove you to adapt to those changes the first time they come around so that you're well prepared when the next change happens or a similar type of change happens. Change becomes an issue for most folks because they're not aware that a change is about to happen, and so it sort of shifts their day-to-day thinking, or just shifts everything that they know to be true, and it's just wild for them and they cannot adapt. So it's hard to accept when the changes happen because they come out of nowhere and you're not aware either where the changes are coming from, why the changes are happening, and you have all of these questions. And then the other reason why folks are not a fan of change is that they don't have systems in place. So of course, if you're not aware that the change is going to happen anyways, if you're not aware that it showed up, you don't have any systems in place, and you are too flustered by the change in itself to actually create those systems. So I'm going to be talking to you today about how to stay engaged and aware in your day-to-day life so that you are aware of when certain things change, how to move through those changes, as well as create systems that help you move through said changes. Now, if you've been here for a while, you know that I'm a fan of defining things, and this is something that I've actually defined before, what systems are. I did a whole video series on the cycle of development, and change is actually one of the things that brought up that idea around thinking about the cycle of development, because it's either you're thinking about making an actual change or a change has happened in your life and you're thinking about growing through that change. And so you kind of go through that cycle of self-development. If you haven't seen that playlist, I highly encourage you to watch that playlist. I'm going to link it above as well as in the description box. Definitely go watch that playlist and think about the areas that you might be in terms of your self-development and ways that you can grow through different changes that are happening in your life. But back to why I brought that up. Systems. The definition for system from our good old friend Google in the dictionary.com is essentially a set of things working together, or a set of principles and procedure of how things should be done. And then a more personal definition of self-care. Most folks, to them, self-care is just doing maintenance type things that make them feel good, make them feel better, make life feel easier for them. However, the way that I define self-care and way that we define self-care in this community is that self-care is a right and a responsibility to yourself first and foremost, and then your community, to know yourself, know better, and then do better. And so that definition is very all-encompassing in terms of the different avenues that self-care could look like, and it's very personable. And the first step is really knowing yourself. Putting those two together, a self-care system is a set of ways that you do things that count as self-care for you, but actually work together to help you grow through certain changes that might occur in your life. For instance, here's an example of a self-care system, an actual self-care system that I use in my life. So I know about myself that I get easily overwhelmed. That's the knowing myself. And then I know that for things to feel less overwhelming for me, I have to be able to write things down. I realize that about myself from trial and error. I realize that it helps me feel less overwhelmed if I have things written down and I know what's coming up. I don't necessarily like surprises that I'm not at least 50% aware of. I need to have some sort of idea of what my day might look like. Otherwise, I will get overwhelmed. And so for me to understand what my day looks like, I need to write things down. I need to plan things out far out, but also up closer to the day of. And so that is the knowing better. And then the doing better part is the actual action piece, and where I start to build systems around these things that I know about myself. So I know I easily get overwhelmed. I know that writing things down helps me. I know that planning helps me. So I've created a system so that in order for me to grow through any sort of week or changes, maybe in a particular day, I'm going to be a lot more busy. I have a system in place where on Sundays I plan out my entire week, and then on a daily basis I write things down. I check my calendar, I check my planner, I physically write things down so that I'm on top of the things that are going to happen in my day. And even if I have a surprise, at least I have other parts of my day planned where I feel less overwhelmed by new things that may pop up. And so that is me creating a system around the idea that I know I get easily overwhelmed. And then I created some things to help me move through that overwhelm. So you see how it's so much easier to accept a change, to grow through a change when you actually are aware of who you are and what the change is and what the difference is in your life, and how to create systems around those changes. So that's really the solution. When change becomes an issue for you, it's just a matter of realizing whether or not you are aware of who you are, one, how you are showing up, what the actual change is, and if you have systems in place for you to grow through that change. And so, one of the reasons why change becomes an issue for you is that you are not aware of either the changes, how it makes you feel, how it's affecting your day to day life, or how you want to show up and who you are in those changes. Then the obvious solution is to become aware. How do you become aware? You ask yourself very specific questions around what you want to learn more about yourself. But a really great way for you to stay self aware is to be self reflective on a regular, consistent basis. I have a framework that I call the peace model for self reflection. I use this on a daily basis in terms of continuing to remain self aware because I practice self care every single day. And again, the first half of self care is knowing yourself. And so I'm constantly in a state of self reflection in terms of how I'm showing up in the world. My peace model, really quickly, I shared this in multiple videos before. Again, you'll find my breakdown of my peace model for self reflection in my cycle of self development playlist. But really quickly, the peace model is just thinking about different areas in your life that you can start to observe, ask yourself questions about to make sure that you are actually prioritizing your wellness and actually taking care of yourself in the ways that you need to take care of yourself. Because self-care looks different for everyone. How people need to be taken care of looks very different from person to person. And so the peace model for self-reflection breaks down into personal, your emotional states, your whether or not you're holding yourself accountable, what your personal culture looks like. And personal is different from personal culture because personal is basically like who you want to be, how you see yourself, and your personal culture is how you actually show up, how you actually make people feel or how people experience you. So that's the subtle difference between your personal and your personal culture. And then the E is for your environment, and that could be your physical surroundings, the people you surround yourself with, or things that you surround yourself with, essentially, or your geographic location. And so that's the peace model. And you just need to be constantly observing different areas of your life, whether or not you're showing up as who you say you are, whether or not you are understanding your needs, because your emotions, your feelings are attached to actually underlying needs. Understanding your emotions will help you address those needs that you actually have. And that way, your emotions will become this debilitating thing that stops you from getting through your day. You're not just like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, or oh, I'm experiencing this and I cannot, but you're actually using what you are feeling to help you navigate what your needs are. And so I say all that to say, when you're in a constant state of reflection, you're able to pinpoint when a change has happened, how that change makes you feel, and ask yourself different questions around, okay, what would make this change a little bit more easier for me to navigate, a little bit more easier for me to go through. And that self-awareness helps you keep in mind the things that you are doing as you're moving through that change, whether or not you're showing up differently, so that when the change happens again, it feels kind of like second nature to you. And then the second half of when change becomes an issue is not having systems in place. So the obvious solution is to create systems for yourself. Now, when you are intentional about making changes, usually the way things go, if you want to make a change, you set a goal and then you think about the action steps it takes to get to that goal. And really, the action steps, a different way to think about it is what are the habits that you need to cultivate in order to achieve that goal. And then after you have your habits down packed, then you either add the habits to a routine, an already established routine, or you create a routine around those habits. So what is the order of how you're going to do that habit? And then your routine becomes a system based off of what your needs are. So back to the example of overwhelm. Say I got a new job. That was the change that happened. I got a new job. My hours are different. And now I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with balancing my job and maybe my business or like other things that I have to do in terms of my personal life, right? And so the change is I got a new job and now I'm feeling a little bit more overwhelmed, right? And so my goal obviously is to feel less overwhelmed. If I'm intentional about this change and I'm aware of this change beforehand, then I can work the regular way. However, if this was a change that obviously I know that I got a job, right? But if I'm not connecting the dots that this new job and having to balance it all is what's causing the overwhelm, then I could essentially work backwards. And so I know that I need a system to better support me in managing all the things that I'm doing. Now I'm going to think about, okay, maybe there are already certain routines that I have in place that I need to maybe I need to combine certain routines. So maybe the reason why I'm overwhelmed, especially in the mornings, is because I feel like I'm rushing myself. And so maybe I need to think about cutting down my morning routine. Maybe my self-care happens in the morning as opposed to later in the evening, whatever it is I need for self-care that day. And so combining different routines, that might be the solution, or maybe I need to cut down on a particular routine. And then a step further would be, now I'm thinking about the different habits. So if working out was a habit that I did that was part of my morning routine, maybe I'll move it to the evening time and that becomes a part of my PM routine. That way it doesn't interfere with the earlier parts of my day. And then of course, the goal is to make sure that I have work-life balance. I think it's much easier to work backwards in that way when you think, okay, what are the things that I already have? If you're already overwhelmed, if the change is already affecting you in a particular way, you don't necessarily want to add new habits and create new routines. You want to work backwards in terms of what you already have in place and then thinking about ways that you can tweak certain things so that they work together in a system for you. I hope that made sense. Feel free to comment below if you have a particular example. I'd love to walk you through whatever example you have in terms of creating a system and working backwards. I hope that this video supported you, whether or not you're experiencing different changes right now or on a whole, you're still trying to adjust to a particular type of change. Make sure that you are fully aware of what exactly the change is, how it's making you feel, and then creating systems around how to grow through those changes. And of course, if you just want to be a part of the tribe, all you got to do is subscribe. Make sure that you are staying hydrated. I had a sister friend mention that she missed me showing my missing jar of water. So make sure that you're staying hydrated, y'all. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.